Hello, Manic Mercurian here, and today we are going to look at the chart of Russia. Now, I did already cover this in a previous video, but that was a different chart. That chart was for, I believe, the year 862, and I'm not going to go back and look at the day. You can watch that video if you're interested. I'll link it in the description. But that was sort of the foundation of Russia as a civilization, as a nation. That was the beginning of the many incarnations of Russia, and it's not unusual for countries to have many cycles, many different constitutions. Some go from monarchy to republic, or whatever the case may be. So it's not unusual for them to have many incarnations. So it was a suggestion from one of my viewers to do the chart for Russia for I believe it's June 12th, 1990. That would be the date that Russia was declared to be independent. So this is, in other words, this is the chart for the modern incarnation of Russia, the Russia we know today that has existed since 1990. Okay, and like he said, it is obviously very relevant at this time. I'm a little late to get to this, but I think it's still relevant. It would be interesting to look at. So yeah, let's just jump into it. So yes, it is. This chart is for Tuesday, June 12th, 1990, in Moscow, Russia, and there's no time. I really looked online for a time. Kind of like how for the signing of the Declaration of Independence for the United States, we have a time that's generally agreed upon for that chart, but couldn't find a time for this chart, and I'm especially disappointed because looking at these placements here, um, it does look like whoever was kind of organizing this, it looks like they were privy to some astrological knowledge because it would be pretty coincidentally auspicious for someone to kind of randomly have this chart for the country. So I'm especially curious if anyone does know a time for this chart for June 12th, 1990. What time was this signed or announced or what have you? Um, I would be very curious because I wouldn't be surprised if there was some really great stuff going on with the ascendant and the houses as well. But for now, we'll just have to look at the sign placements, and we can get a lot of information from there as well, just from seeing what signs the planets were in and stuff like that. So first, let me just talk about why I think this is a really auspicious chart. For one, you have a lot of planets in domicile, and this is something I talked about too. So with the with the chart of Russia, the Russia that's existed since the 800s AD, that chart was pretty bad. There were a lot of planets in detriment. I believe Venus and Jupiter were in detriment, which especially for a country, it just almost pains me to see because Venus and Jupiter are the benefics. They bring abundance. They bring good fortune. And especially for a country, if you want a really prosperous, wealthy country, you really want to have some strong, Venus and Jupiter action going on. So to see those both in detriment, it really showed to me that, I don't believe whoever started Russia back then, I don't believe they had astrological knowledge. This chart, though, is very different because, well, let's look at the benefics. So Venus is in Taurus. Wow, it's in domicile, so that's a strong Venus. And I think for a country, Venus in Taurus would almost maybe be better than Venus in Libra. Both would be on domicile, but Venus in Libra would be more like really good diplomatically. Venus in Taurus to me looks really strong for the economy. So this would suggest to me that the modern incarnation of Russia since 1990 may have a much better time economically. Russia does have a pretty, I think, volatile history economically. Good times, bad times, um, times where it lagged behind the West, and then times where it was, catching up and rivaling powers of the West. But then there were these fluctuations with wealth. So again, I think that's indicative of that chart from the 800s. But yeah, again, this one's much better. We also have Jupiter in exaltation in Cancer, so that is really beautiful. Not only that, we also have Mars in domicile in Aries. So right off the bat, and how could I forget? We have Mercury in domicile in Gemini. Not only that, but Mercury had just entered Gemini. Mercury is at 0 degrees Gemini here, and again, that's why I say that would be pretty strange if this was a coincidence because you have Mars, Venus, and Mercury all in domicile, plus you have Jupiter exalted, so that's pretty much all the inner planets are in domicile, and then you've got Jupiter exalted, which is just so important for our country. Um, Yeah, so if this was just random and they didn't have any astrological knowledge, they really hit the jackpot. I think this is a nice chart for a country. You've got Mars and Aries, so that would show a strong military, strong diplomacy through the military or through militaristic diplomacy, if it can be called that, really, I guess. It could also show maybe some aggression, so not to take too much. I'm trying to do this in an unbiased way, so I'm not going off of current events or anything like that. But yeah, Mars and Aries would be potentially a little bit aggressive, maybe leading the world militarily or initiating militaristic actions or projects, things like that. Being very independent with military, militarily independent, militarily strong. All that, Mars is the warrior energy, the fighter energy, and you've got it in Aries where it's in domicile, and Aries is the leader, the fighter, the warrior. So yeah, so that's really great. Again, like I said, Venus, which in a country's chart would be the economy and wealth. I don't know, stocks, wealth, industries. That's in Taurus. Taurus is the sign of really grounded growth, slow, steady growth. So that's really beautiful. Mercury, which for a country would be more like the technology or the information and technological capacity, that's in Gemini. So again, wow, really beautiful. This could show, Russia would be potentially going off this chart. I would think that modern Russia would be quick to get new technologies or quick to learn about technologies. And if we look at the history, the history that I know anyway, that does seem to make sense. Russia emerged as a country in the early 90s, very behind technologically. They were very late to get the internet and things of that nature. But then they very quickly, gained a lot of this technology and again rose to a position of, you know, rivaling other, being one of the major powers of the world again. So yeah, that makes sense. Strong military, strong economy, strong information and technology. Um, yeah, and then just touching on the Jupiter again, in addition to Venus, Jupiter would also bring wealth and abundance. I think Jupiter would also have more to do with like philosophies of the culture of the nation or faith, and that is actually pretty strong in Cancer. So I don't know if that totally matches up with the Russia we know today, but yeah, I would see that they have maybe a strong ideology or strong faith, whatever they kind of believe in as a country, as a people. Looks to me like it would be very strong, judging by Jupiter in exaltation. I think Jupiter also somewhat pertains to just generally speaking, it pertains to like diplomacy as well. How do you interact with different cultures, different parts of the world? And again, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, so I think that really gives this country the best shot you can possibly give it for all these great things here. Oh, interestingly too, I just noticed this Jupiter is conjunct Chiron. That's kind of weird. So maybe Russia could be almost like a big brother, no pun intended, but like a mentor or guide for other countries, helping maybe developing countries with develop or something like that. Let's see, teaching, helping other cultures or countries, something of that nature. There's some kind of guide or healer emphasis. I know I'm talking really highly about Russia, but um, I don't know if I actually am necessarily. What I'm really saying is that whoever came up with this chart, whoever announced, um, Russia to be independent when they did so in a very, wise way, or astrologically speaking. That's all I'm saying. Okay, I'm not trying to be political or anything. But let's look at these other planets here. So we also have Saturn in domicile in Capricorn. So again, that's just so crazy. It's very rare to have that many planets in domicile and then Jupiter exalted. You also have Pluto in domicile in Scorpio. Again, really crazy. And and then one last one. This is not known to be true in modern astrology, generally speaking. It's not the consensus. But in my personal opinion, in my planetary scheme, I do believe personally that Uranus is in domicile in Capricorn. So that would just be another, almost all the planets are in domicile, really. So in my opinion, it'd be Saturn, Uranus, Pluto, Mars, Venus, Mercury. So that's six planets in domicile plus Jupiter exalted. I know I keep saying that, but that is just so crazy. I mean, I almost think like you would have had to wait a long time. They would have had to wait a long time to get a chart this good. But you know, that would of course be worth it when you're, you know, birthing a country into existence, or a reincarnation of a country. Um, so with Saturn in domicile in Capricorn, that would show, you know, very strong leadership, kind of top down, you know, authoritarian a little bit. Saturn likes to be authoritative and have control. And, you know, and I suppose for a country you would want control, and especially for Russia, you know, from what I've been told, from what I've heard, you know, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, they went from a very structured, you know, structure everywhere, probably too much structure during the Soviet Union, maybe, and then that just collapsed. So then it was almost just like free, completely libertarian, you know, no rules at all, completely free market, you know, no structure at all, which is really dangerous. And so anyway, so it would make sense that you'd want, I think for anyone, you'd want some kind of structure for the country, but especially coming from that completely structureless episode of Russian history, it makes sense you'd want a Saturn in domicile for sure. Let's see here. And then also with Saturn, I think Saturn makes, like, Saturn can be challenging, yeah. You know, we all have a hard time with Saturn at times. But Saturn also works to ensure that we have, you know, a prosperous future. Saturn's all about the long run. So I get, you know, that makes sense too. You'd want a really strong Saturn for a nation's chart, um, for that reason as well, to ensure long-term prosperity. And you know, and with Saturn and domicile, I would think you'd have that, you know, really strong hands-on authoritarian leadership, and potentially long-term growth as well. And Venus and Taurus backs it up too. They're sort of trining by sign, not by aspect or degree, but yeah, that shows, I think, long-term growth. Um, let's see. I don't know if I'm reading this totally right, but I do think, you know, Saturn's making a loose opposition to the Jupiter Chiron conjunction. Saturn up at the top in Capricorn opposing Jupiter. I can get my pointer here. There's a loose opposition there, and you can see these red lines here. There's, you know, three oppositions. Jupiter's more exactly opposing Uranus, and then also Neptune and Saturn. So there could maybe be some kind of clashes between the authority figures, like the government, politicians, clashes between them and any like religious members or spiritual people of the modern Russia. There may be like clashes there since Saturn and Jupiter are opposing. And again, I would just be so curious to see how the houses are laid out, because I bet you that would be strategic as well. That would be really interesting to see. There's probably something going on because the houses would kind of change, you know, the nature of these oppositions as well. So I think there's more meaning there that we may not be privy to. Let's see here. Okay. Um, let's talk about some more auspicious, you know, beneficial parts of this chart. So you got North Node by the Moon. So the Moon was right by the North Node, just approaching the North Node, so still getting there. So that's potentially like the easiest, strongest part of the lunar cycle. And also, it's very interesting to have Moon in Aquarius. Guess what other country has Moon in Aquarius? The United States of America does. So that's pretty interesting. I almost wonder, like, maybe this is just me being kind of not, I don't know what the word is, not egocentric, but, you know, America centric as an American, and since so much of the, you know, media and information I consume is America centric. But part of me also almost wonders if, you know, Moon in Aquarius has anything to do with America's moon being in Aquarius, you know. And again, I don't know if that's just me being surrounded by Americanism, America, um, or if there may be actually a link there, maybe some kind of, you know, it would be interesting, you know, that'd be a video idea to compare the two charts, because having the same moon sign, just like with people, does put, you know, a really high potential of getting along, sharing, you know, a lot in common, being buddies, so to speak. So I almost wonder if that's kind of what they're trying to get at. Whoever created this chart, whoever set the time, if there was a person, Moon in Aquarius to be, is almost like a nod to America's chart. But again, it's also really great just having Moon by the North Node. North Node was in Aquarius. That's also pretty cool for a country. Aquarius in general is a great sign politically for, for nations, for countries, for politicians, just because Aquarius is so forward thinking. We're also moving into the age of Aquarius, so Aquarian themes are the name of the game increasingly so. And especially for a country, you want to think holistically, you want to, think about the future, you want to be accessing new technologies or inventing new technologies, having that kind of revolutionary themes as well. So Aquarius is a great sign politically as well. So that may also be why the moon is there. But specifically having the moon by the North Node, it shows Russia would potentially be really great at being a leader, being kind of an independent, quirky nation, like someone who leads, or a nation which leads by being unusual, provocative, different from all the others. And again, America has that too. You can see that's another example. And that to me makes sense. Both America and Russia are kind of leaders. They're independent. They are, unusual, unlike any other country. They have their own stance and their own background, their own history. Um, and yeah, so anyway, so that seems to make sense to me, and it does seem potentially very beneficial for a country to have. There is a large air focus, just because both the luminaries are in air. So not only do you have Moon in Aquarius, but you also have Sun in Gemini. And again, I think there's a technological focus there. Gemini and Aquarius are the more revolutionary air signs. Libra likes to keep things balanced, but Gemini and Aquarius are like totally revolutionary. They want to just try new things and be really experimental. Come up with new technologies or new information. They're all about information and learning and obscure ideas and facts. So anyway, so having Sun in Gemini, trining Moon in Aquarius. Now, of course, this is not a trine. It's not an exact trine. It's just trining by sign. But still, for one, you have that harmony there. Sun and Moon are trining by sign, so Gemini Sun is very agreeable with Moon and Aquarius. They have a lot in common. So that to me, for a country, would suggest that there's some kind of harmony there, like, or some kind of unity, and that would make a country kind of quick to act. There wouldn't be as much of a filter. So to me, that would almost limit like bureaucracy. There wouldn't be all these different parts that are in disagreement. It would be more unified, which that makes sense as well. Um, let's see. And what else? What else? Yeah, and then also that technological focus. I think the founders of this new nation of Russia, judging by this chart, they wanted it to be well rounded. They wanted it to be, have a good economy, have strong military. But I think above all else, they wanted it to be a technologically advanced society and culture and nation. That's my takeaway from not only Mercury and domicile, just like Venus and Mars are, but also having Moon in Aquarius by the North Node, making that loose trine to the Sun in Gemini. This would be a very informationally based nation. And also, not only that, but the air signs are known to be talkers, they're known to be diplomatic, they're known to have, many relations with energies that may be very different from their own. So having that air focus also shows to me that Russia would have a lot of diplomacy, a lot going on there, a lot of different connections and relationships with other countries in the world. Um, and I think I pretty much covered everything. I know that was kind of quick, but I think I covered everything. So, and I really do want to be unbiased. I know I just said a lot of good things about Russia, and it's not that I'm trying to take a stance on anything. It's just that this chart is really beautiful. And again, there is intention here. So, does that live up to the Russia we know? I guess that's for you to decide. I don't really know, but I think especially in the long run, with the Saturn strong and Saturn ruling over the Moon and the North Node, there is potential for Russia to be a successful country in the long run, I think. One last thing here, there is South Node in Leo, so that may be a source of potential challenge. That's one downside that you have to have by having North Node in Aquarius. So although modern Russia would be good at technology and revolutionary new trends, or being a leader, being a outcast, so to speak, as a nation, it'd be good at stuff like that. Or it may initially have hard times with that, but then over time, really expand in that direction what it would initially be good at, but also lead to its potential destruction, would be um, this is going to sound a little bit contradictory, but South Node in Leo would suggest that this nation wants to be a bold leader. It wants to have all the attention on a world stage, and although it's used to that, it's not gonna work for this new incarnation. And to me, that makes a lot of sense. So with South Nodes, we talk about inherited energies or themes from past lives. And usually for reading a person's chart, you don't have a lot of information regarding their past lives. But for this nation of Russia, we can see the past lives, and having South Node in Leo makes a lot of sense because its last incarnation as the Soviet Union showed that it did have this past life, so to speak, where it was super bold and super, it was a world leader and very kind of supreme and superior or dominant. And that makes sense with Leo. Leo is so dominant, so confident and outgoing. It's a leader of sorts, and it's a consistent leader. It leads in a consistent way, so it can be a leader for a long time. It can have that consistent fiery dominance and enthusiasm. So that makes sense that the Soviet Union kind of had that, and that's an energy that modern Russia brings to the table. However, again, that's not what this country is meant to do. If it leads the same way that the Soviet Union did, if it wants to be really I don't know, a world leader and in charge of everything, I think that would lead to its downfall. So, although there are a lot of great things about this chart, being having their own history, being very sovereign, being a well-rounded nation potentially, but going off this chart, uh, judging by this chart, I don't think Russia is meant to be a complete, world leader in the way that it was, with the Soviet Union. I think this shows that it's meant to be, a partner, an ally to other countries, maybe sometimes, aggressive militarily with the Mars in Aries, but never completely dominating or completely, not one of the, one or two top world powers. Again, I don't think that's meant to be the fate. I think if Russia does go in that direction, again, it would lead to its downfall. It just wouldn't work with South Node in Leo there. It would be a position that may be very familiar to it, one that it does very well for some amount of time, but that it would quickly crumble and decay. So that's my take on this chart for modern Russia. If you have any suggestions or comments, I'd be happy to hear any information you have. And again, if you have a time for this chart, I'd be really curious to know that. But yeah, I'd be happy to hear your feedback. Tell me how I did. And if you have any suggestions or would like a reading, feel free to email me at manic.mercurian@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.